Skip your daughter's graduation. Look in her closet instead. I did. And found this. The alarm blared at exactly 6 hours in AM, though I'd been awake for hours. Today wasn't just any Thursday. It was the day my daughter Emily would graduate summa cum laude from business school. A day I'd been mentally preparing for since she first showed an aptitude for numbers at age 8. Victoria Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Industries, had raised a daughter who was following in my footsteps. Or so I thought. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, smoothing the emerging wrinkles that had deepened over 20 years of boardroom battles and late-night strategy sessions. My father had built this company from nothing, and when he passed 5 years ago, I had taken it to heights he never imagined. Now, our family name graced buildings across 3 continents. That kind of legacy required sacrifice. Emily understood that better than anyone. "Mrs. Caldwell?" My assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your 7:30 conference call with Tokyo is set up in your home office." Even on Emily's graduation day, business came first. It always did. Emily would understand. She'd grown up watching me take calls during her piano recitals and checking emails through her high school plays. That's what it took to survive in our industry. That's what I'd taught her. "I'll be right there," I replied, slipping into my tailored navy suit. As I wrapped up the call, I glanced at the clock. 8:15 AM. Emily's ceremony wasn't until noon, but she'd left early. Something about meeting friends for breakfast beforehand. Lately, she'd been distant, always rushing off with vague explanations and declined dinner invitations. I chalked it up to final exams and graduation stress, but a small voice inside whispered, there was more. "I'll just leave it on her bed," I murmured to myself, climbing the grand staircase to the east wing where Emily's suite of rooms remained unchanged from her childhood, save for the more sophisticated decor she'd selected during her college years. I knocked softly on her door out of habit, though I knew she wasn't home. The heavy oak door swung open silently on well-oiled hinges. Emily's room was immaculate as always. Bed made with military precision, books aligned by height on her shelves, not a speck of dust on any surface. My daughter had inherited my perfectionism, if nothing else. I picked up the small velvet box from my desk. Inside was a platinum necklace with our family crest, identical to the one my father had given me when I took over the company. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a symbol of our legacy, and today was the perfect day to pass it on. I'd meant to give it to Emily at breakfast, but she'd slipped out before dawn. She'd want me to close it properly, I reasoned aloud, moving toward the closet. It wasn't snooping if you were just tidying up, was it? The closet was as organized as the rest of the room. Dresses arranged by color, shoes paired perfectly on custom racks. But there on the upper shelf, partially hidden behind a row of handbags, was a bright red box I'd never seen before. It looked out of place among Emily's preferred neutral palette. I placed the velvet box on her pillow, arranging the cream-colored gift note just so. That's when I noticed it. Her closet door was slightly ajar, unusual for someone as meticulous as Emily. A flash of red caught my eye through the crack. Something wasn't right. I reached for the box, surprised to find it was heavier than it looked. It was locked, but the key was taped to the bottom, amateur security for someone so careful. My heart pounded as I removed the key. This was crossing a line, one I hadn't crossed since Emily was in high school, and I'd searched her room for drugs after a classmate's overdose. But something in my gut twisted with unease. Emily had been acting strange for months, canceling our weekly lunches, keeping conversations superficial, avoiding the office despite my repeated invitations to shadow me. Was she in some kind of trouble? As her mother, didn't I have a right, no, an obligation to know? I shouldn't. I really shouldn't. "Just a quick peek," I whispered, "just to make sure she's okay." The key turned smoothly in the lock. I lifted the lid, expecting perhaps love letters from a boyfriend she hadn't told me about, or maybe application materials for jobs she was too nervous to discuss. What I found stopped my breath. Stacks of legal documents filled the box. On top was a familiar blue folder, our company's confidential shareholder documents. My fingers trembled as I lifted it, opening to the first page where bold text proclaimed Certificate of Share Transfer. And there, where my name should have been, was Emily's. My vision blurred as I frantically flipped through page after page. Transfer forms, voting proxies, board meeting minutes I'd never seen, and my father's signature on everything, dated just weeks before his death. "No," I whispered, a chill spreading through my chest. He wouldn't do this. But the evidence was undeniable. My father, who had promised me control of the company, who had groomed me for 30 years to take his place, had secretly transferred significant shares to Emily before he died. Shares that should have come to me, shares that gave her voting power. I didn't know existed. How long had she known? How long had she kept this from me? A photograph slipped from between the pages. My father and Emily in his study, smiling conspiratorially over what appeared to be these very documents. She couldn't have been more than 18 in the picture. 5 years. She'd known for 5 years and never said a word. My phone buzzed, jolting me back to reality. A text from my assistant, car leaving in 30 minutes for the ceremony. I stared at the phone, then back at the documents spread across the closet floor. Emily's graduation, the ceremony where she'd walk across the stage, accept her diploma, and smile innocently at the crowd. While all along she'd been planning what exactly? With shaking hands, I replaced the documents, locked the box, and returned it to its hiding place. I needed time to think, to process this betrayal, but as I turned to leave, a final document caught my eye, peeking from beneath the box's lining. It was a meeting agenda. For today, scheduled just 2 hours after graduation. She was planning a coup. Emergency shareholder meeting, the heading read. Agenda Item 1, Leadership Transition. My blood turned to ice as realization dawned. This wasn't just about secret shares. Emily wasn't just going to graduate today. My hands shook as I spread the documents across my home office desk. I'd made excuses to my driver, claiming I needed another hour of preparation before heading to the ceremony. In reality, I needed to understand exactly what I was facing. The share certificates were legitimate. My father's distinctive signature was unmistakable, complete with the flourish he added to the final L in Caldwell. The corporate seal was intact, the watermarks authentic. I'd spent 25 years authenticating documents. There was no forgery here. 37%? That's how much of my company now belonged to my daughter. My father had always maintained that I controlled 65%, with the remaining 35% distributed among minor shareholders and board members, whose loyalty I'd cultivated for years. But these papers revealed the truth. My actual ownership was only 42%. At some point, my father had transferred nearly a quarter of the company's shares directly to Emily and kept the transfer hidden from me. "Why, Dad?" I whispered, tracing his signature with my fingertip. We had an agreement. I remembered his words clearly. On his deathbed, he'd taken my hand and said, "Victoria, everything I've built is yours to protect now. Keep Caldwell in the family. Keep it strong." Not once had he mentioned Emily's stake. Not once had he warned me that my own daughter held enough power to challenge me. I pulled out my phone and called our corporate lawyer, Marcus. "Victoria, good morning. Shouldn't you be—" "Who authorized these transfer documents?" I interrupted, my voice tight. A pause. "Which documents are you referring to?" "Don't play games with me, Marcus. The shares my father transferred to Emily. Did you know?" The silence that followed told me everything. "I was bound by attorney-client privilege," he finally said. "Your father was very clear about his wishes." "I am the CEO of this company. I should have been informed the moment he died." The instructions were explicit. Emily was to be notified of her inheritance on her 25th birthday or upon completion of her MBA, whichever came first. Today, Emily turned 25 last month, and today she would complete her MBA. "You've known for 5 years and said nothing," I hissed. "Victoria, your father had his reasons." I ended the call. Marcus's loyalty had clearly been compromised. Who else had been keeping secrets? Who else had been plotting behind my back while smiling to my face? I returned to the documents, paying closer attention to the board meeting minutes I'd never seen. Meetings held in the mountains at my father's retreat. Meetings I'd been told were canceled due to his declining health. The dates aligned with weekends Emily had supposedly spent studying with friends. They'd been meeting in secret, my father teaching Emily everything he knew, preparing her for this moment. A yellowed letter slipped from between the pages, addressed to Emily in my father's handwriting. I hesitated only briefly before opening it. "My dearest granddaughter, When you read this, you will be ready for the responsibility I've entrusted to you. Victoria is brilliant and strong, but she has forgotten the heart of Caldwell Industries. She sees only profits and expansion, not the people who make it possible. You have the vision she lacks, the compassion I failed to instill in her. You see beyond quarterly reports to the future I always imagined. The shares I've given you are not just paper. They are my faith in you to bring balance where your mother has created division. The board will follow your lead if you show them the path forward with confidence. Your mother has ruled through fear for too long. It's time for a new Caldwell to rise. With all my love and confidence, Grandpa. I crumpled the letter in my fist, hot tears blurring my vision. Betrayal burned through my chest. All those late nights, all those sacrifices, all those years spent building his legacy, and this was how he repaid me, by secretly grooming my daughter to replace me. The emergency shareholder meeting agenda revealed the full scope of Emily's plan. Item 1, present evidence of financial mismanagement and ethical violations. Item 2, vote of no confidence. Item 3, nomination of new CEO. A notification popped up on my phone. Graduation ceremony begins in 30 minutes. I stared at the document in my hands, then at the message. While I had been preparing to celebrate my daughter's achievement, she had been preparing to destroy me. The graduation wasn't just a milestone. It was a smokescreen, a distraction to keep me smiling and proud while she gathered her allies for the real event of the day. The perfect cover for a corporate execution. I carefully replaced the documents in the red box, my shock hardening into something colder, something sharper. Emily thought she had learned everything from her grandfather, but she had forgotten one crucial lesson: never underestimate Victoria Caldwell. I adjusted my suit jacket, applied fresh lipstick, and headed for the car. I would attend my daughter's graduation as planned. I would smile and applaud, as expected. But Emily wasn't the only one who could play the long game. If she wanted war, she would get it, and she would learn that I hadn't survived 20 years at the top by being unprepared for battle. The university auditorium buzzed with excitement. Parents clutched programs and flowers, grandparents wiped proud tears, and the air smelled of perfume and anticipation. I took my reserved front row seat, nodding to several board members scattered throughout the audience. Had they been invited by Emily? Were they here for the ceremony or the coup that would follow? Mrs. Caldwell, wonderful to see you. Richard Daniels, our CFO of 15 years, slid into the seat beside me. Big day for Emily. Bigger than I realized, I replied, studying his face for signs of complicity. Richard had always been loyal, or so I'd thought. Will you be attending the meeting after? A flicker of surprise crossed his features. Yes. Emily mentioned a small gathering to Toto. I assumed you'd organized it. So that's how she'd played it. A celebration that would transform into a boardroom ambush. Clever. The lights dimmed, and I forced my racing thoughts to slow. I needed clarity, strategy. The dean took the stage, his voice echoing through the sound system as he welcomed everyone to the graduation ceremony. I scanned the rows of black caps and gowns until I found her. Third row, shoulders straight, head high. Even from behind, I could sense Emily's confidence. She'd always been poised, even as a child, but today there was something different in the set of her shoulders. Power, anticipation. My phone vibrated. A text from my secretary. Urgent message from Tokyo investors. Need immediate response. Any other day, I would have stepped out to handle it. Today, I silenced my phone and slipped it into my purse. Emily glanced back, scanning the audience until her eyes met mine. She smiled, the same sweet smile she'd had since childhood, and gave a small wave. How could she look so innocent while planning my destruction? The ceremony proceeded with mind-numbing slowness. Distinguished speakers offered platitudes about the future. Aurors were presented. Names were called. Through it all, I maintained my CEO's smile, pleasant, confident, revealing nothing of the storm within. Emily Victoria Caldwell, Master of Business Administration, summa cum laude. The audience erupted in applause as Emily crossed the stage, accepted her diploma, and paused for a photographer. I stood and clapped mechanically, wondering how many of these people knew what would happen next. How many of my so-called colleagues were eagerly awaiting my downfall. As the ceremony concluded, I moved against the crowd toward the stage where Emily was surrounded by well-wishers. She spotted me approaching and whispered something to her friends, who dispersed like startled birds. "Mom, you made it through the whole thing without checking emails. I'm impressed." She embraced me, the familiar scent of her perfume, the one I'd given her last Christmas, momentarily disarming me. I wouldn't miss it for the world. My voice was steady despite the hurricane in my chest. "I'm so proud of you." "Really?" She searched my face. "That means everything to me." Was she mocking me? I couldn't tell. The Emily I thought I knew wouldn't be capable of such deception. But then the Emily I thought I knew wouldn't orchestrate a corporate takeover behind my back. "We should talk," I said, leading her away from the crowd. "Somewhere private." Her smile faltered only slightly. "Actually, Mom, I'm already running late. The shareholder meeting at 2 o'clock? I kept my voice low. "In the Caldwell Tower boardroom?" She froze, her fingers tightening around her diploma. "How did you—" "It doesn't matter. What matters is why my daughter, my own flesh and blood, would conspire to pinch me in secret instead of coming to me directly." Emily glanced around, then pulled me into an empty classroom, closing the door behind us. Gone was the beaming graduate. In her place stood a young woman with my father's steely determination in her eyes. "Would you have listened if I had?" she asked. "When have you ever truly listened to me, Mom? When have my ideas ever been good enough for the great Victoria Caldwell?" "This isn't about ideas," I hissed. "This is about loyalty. You've been meeting with the board behind my back for years. Planning this coup while I've been running the company. Growing it. Exploiting it," Emily corrected. "Grandpa saw what you were becoming. What the company was becoming under your leadership. Your grandfather promised me. He promised you would lead until someone better came along." Her voice was calm, controlled. "He chose me, Mom. And today the board will too." The room seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "You can't possibly have the votes." Her smile returned, not the innocent one from before, but something sharper, more calculating. My smile. 37% from Grandpa. 8% from Richard, who's tired of your reckless expansion strategies. 5% from Theodore, who never forgave you for canceling the employee pension program. Another 6% from the Hamilton siblings, who've been waiting for someone to challenge you since you shut down their division. I did the math quickly. 56%. A controlling interest. "And what exactly are you planning to do with my company?" My voice sounded distant, even to my own ear. "Fix it." Emily checked her watch. "The meeting starts in 20 minutes. You can fight this and lose publicly, or you can attend as my mother and support the transition with dignity." She straightened her graduation gown and cap. "Either way, it's happening. Today was never just about graduation, Mom. It's about new beginnings, for the company, for us. I've been preparing for this my entire life." As she walked out, diploma in hand, the terrible truth hit me. This wasn't a spontaneous betrayal. This wasn't a recent development. This was the culmination of a plan years in the making. And I, the famously shrewd Victoria Caldwell, had been blind to it all. I stood frozen in the empty classroom for several minutes after Emily left, my mind racing to process what had just happened. The graduation gown, the innocent smile, the wave from the stage, all part of an elaborate performance. I'd taught her too well. As parents and graduates streamed past the door in celebration, I pulled myself together. Victoria Caldwell didn't crumble. Victoria Caldwell didn't surrender. Victoria Caldwell fought back. I punched in the private number of Samuel Barnes, our longest-serving board member and my father's oldest friend. "Victoria, wasn't that ceremony something? Your girl's got your brains and her grandfather's heart." "Samuel," I cut in, "I need your support at today's meeting." A pause. What meeting? So he hadn't been invited. Interesting. Emily has called an emergency shareholder meeting. She's making a play for my position. Another, longer pause. "And you're only finding out now?" "That's not important. What matters is stopping her. I need your 3%. His sigh carried the weight of decades. "Victoria, did you ever wonder why your father kept those shares from you? Why he gave them to Emily?" "Don't start that nonsense. My father built this company for me to run. He built it for the family to thrive. There's a difference." Samuel's voice softened. "The board has concerns, Victoria. Serious ones. The Malaysian plant incident, the pension fund reallocation. The layoffs during record profits. Business decisions, I snapped. Necessary ones. Perhaps? But there are other ways. Ways Emily has been proposing for years, while you dismissed her as naive. The betrayal cut deeper with each revelation. You've been meeting with her too. I've been listening to her. Something you might try. I ended the call, my last hope for alliance extinguished. The clock showed 1:45 p.m., 15 minutes until the meeting that could end my career, my legacy, everything I'd worked for. The journey to Caldwell Tower passed in a blur. As my driver navigated midday traffic, I scrolled through my contacts, calling board members and shareholders. Each call yielded the same result: vague excuses, sudden unavailability, or outright admission of support for Emily's vision. By the time I reached the executive elevator, defeat loomed like a shadow. But even cornered, I would not go quietly. The boardroom doors were closed when I arrived. Through the glass walls, I could see them all assembled. The full board, key shareholders, even department heads who rarely attended such meetings. Emily stood at the head of the table, no longer in her graduation gown, but in a perfectly tailored suit that mirrored my own style with subtle, youthful updates. She looked up as I entered, her composure unshaken. "Mom, I'm glad you came." Her voice carried the same authority I'd spent decades perfecting. We were just about to begin. Every head turned, expressions ranging from surprise to discomfort to barely concealed satisfaction. I walked slowly to my usual seat, only to find Richard already positioned there. "I believe your place is there," Emily said, indicating a chair to her right, not the head of the table, but not relegated to the sidelines either. A position of respect, if not power. "I'll stand," I replied coldly. "As you wish." Emily nodded, then addressed the room. "For those who may be confused by today's meeting, allow me to clarify. This emergency session has been called in accordance with company bylaws to address leadership concerns that have been mounting for several years. Concerns fabricated by an inexperienced graduate with delusions of grandeur." I interrupted. Emily didn't flinch. "Mom, you always wanted me to be strong. I'm just doing what you taught me." The calm statement struck me like a physical blow. How many times had I told her to be assertive, take what she deserved, to never show weakness? "The documents before you," she continued, sliding folders across the table, "outline both the legal basis for this meeting and the proposed changes to leadership structure." I snatched a folder, scanning its contents with growing disbelief. Everything was meticulously documented, not just the share stress and voting agreements, but a comprehensive transition plan that addressed every aspect of the company's operations. "This is absurd," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You have no experience running a global corporation." Emily met my gaze evenly. "Grandpa gave me those shares because he saw the future in me, not you." She gestured to a screen where photographs appeared. Emily with my father at various facilities. Emily meeting with international partners. Emily reviewing documents with board members. "I've been learning this business from the ground up for 5 years, while you've been managing it from your office. You went behind my back. I tried working with you first. For 2 years after college, I brought you proposals, innovations, solutions to problems you refused to acknowledge. You dismissed every single one. Because they were impractical, idealistic. They were necessary," Emily countered. "The company culture has become toxic under your leadership. Employee satisfaction is at an all-time low. Turnover rates are unsustainable. 3 class action lawsuits are pending that you haven't told the board about." Murmurs rippled through the room. How did she know about those? "Mom," Emily's voice softened, "you built an empire, but at what cost? The workers whose benefits you cut, the environmental protocols you bypass, the family values Grandpa founded this company on." I wanted to argue to defend myself, but the evidence she presented was overwhelming. Graphs showing declining employee retention alongside rising executive bonuses. Environmental impact reports I'd buried, customer satisfaction metrics I'd manipulated. "You're ready to bring fresh leadership," I said slowly, finally understanding the full scope of what she'd done, "and expose the toxic, outdated practices I've clung to." It wasn't a question, but Emily nodded anyway, her eyes never leaving mine. In them, I saw not triumph or malice, but something unexpected: hope. For the first time since discovering her secret, I truly looked at my daughter. Not as a betrayer or an enemy, but as what she had become, a leader with vision, preparation, and the conviction to challenge even me. I had severely underestimated Emily Caldwell. "Let me be clear about what I'm proposing," Emily said, clicking to the next slide in her president. The boardroom remained utterly silent, all eyes fixed on her confident movements and articulate delivery. Caldwell Industries requires not just a change in leadership, but a fundamental shift in priorities. I remained standing, arms crossed, watching as my daughter, who just hours ago had been in a graduation gown, commanded the attention of seasoned executives twice her age. Her presentation was flawless. Each point methodically addressed, each proposal supported by thorough research and financial projections. She wasn't just making vague promises, she was offering concrete solutions. "Our employee turnover has increased by 42% in the last 3 years," Emily continued, displaying a graph that made the decline painfully obvious. "Exit interviews reveal the same complaints: toxic management culture, impossible demands, lack of work-life balance. We're hemorrhaging talent we can't afford to lose." Richard nodded. "We've lost 4 department heads this quarter alone." "And replaced them with yes-men," Emily added, with a pointed glance in my direction. "Prey but hired for loyalty rather than innovation." Heat rose to my face. Was that how the board saw my appointments? As creating an echo chamber? "The modernization plan before you addresses these issues through 3 key initiatives," Emily continued. "First, reinstating the employee stock ownership program my grandfather established and my mother eliminated." Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. My father's original ESOP had been popular, but the quarterly costs had been dragging down our profit margins. I'd replaced it with performance bonuses for top executives, more efficient, more targeted. Second, an immediate environmental audit and compliance upgrade for all facilities, starting with the Malaysian plant where corners have been cut. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. The Malaysian situation had been contained, the regulatory fines paid quietly. Or so I'd thought. And third, a complete restructuring of executive compensation to align with industry standards and employee well-being rather than solely short-term profits. Translation: cutting my salary and those of my loyal directors. I'd had enough. "This is absurd," I interrupted, stepping forward to stand opposite Emily at the table. "You're proposing to undo years of strategic decisions that have made this company what it is today. Our market share has tripled under my leadership. Our stock price has never been higher." "At what cost?" Emily countered, her voice remaining measured while mine had risen. "Our reputation is suffer. 3 major clients have indicated they're considering other partners due to our labor practices. The industry press is asking questions about the Malaysian incident that won't stay buried forever." She turned to address the room directly. "I've spent the past 5 years learning this business from every angle, not just the executive suite, but the factory floors, the customer service centers, the loading docks. I've spoken with employees at every level, from janitors to vice presidents." "And what makes you think that qualifies you to run a billion-dollar corporation?" I demanded. Emily didn't flinch. "The same thing that qualified you, Mother, the Caldwell name. Intelligence, determination, and the support of people who believe in my vision." She gestured around the table. "People who have been quietly gathering support and who now have the votes to make this change happen." The confidence in her voice was absolute. She wasn't bluffing about the votes. I could see it in the faces around the table. They'd already decided. Theodore Winters, head of our European division and a longtime ally, cleared his throat. "Victoria, Emily's proposals address concerns many of us have raised in recent years, concerns you've consistently dismissed. So this is how it ends?" I laughed bitterly. "A boardroom coup led by my own donor on her graduation day?" "This isn't personal, Mom," Emily said, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. "This is about the future of Caldwell Industries, the legacy Grandpa entrusted to both of us in different ways." Samuel Barnes rose from his seat at the far end of the table. "I move that we proceed to the vote as outlined in the meeting agenda." "Second," Richard said immediately. Emily nodded. "All those in favor of the leadership transition and modernization plan as presented, please raise your hands." I watched in stunned silence as hands rose around the table. Richard, Theodore, the Hamilton siblings, Samuel, others. Longtime colleagues, supposed friends, allies I trusted with company secrets and strategic decisions. The motion carries with 59% voting in favor, Emily announced formally. The room blurred around me as the reality set in. In the space of a few hours, I had lost everything. My position, my authority, my legacy, and worse, I had lost to my own daughter in front of everyone who mattered in my professional world. Emily approached me, extending her hand professionally, not for a shake, but offering me a document. "What's this?" I asked, not taking it. "Your new position description. Senior Strategic Advisor reporting directly to the CEO." Her voice softened. "I'm not pushing you out completely, Mom. Your experience is valuable. But the company needs new direction." In front of everyone, I was forced to watch my daughter rise as the new power at Caldwell Industries. The daughter I had underestimated. The daughter I had never really known. "Congratulations, Emily," I said coldly, taking the document without looking at it. "You've won." But as I turned to leave the boardroom, her voice stopped me. "No, Mom. If I've done this right, we all have." I spent 3 days at home after the meeting, ignoring calls and emails, nursing my wounds and pride in private. The business news had already caught wind of the leadership change at Caldwell Industries. "Young blood revitalizes family empire," one headline declared. Another read, "Emily Caldwell, the future of ethical business leadership." Not one mentioned my contributions. 20 years of sacrifice reduced to a footnote in my daughter's ascension story. On the 4th day, my doorbell rang. I considered ignoring it until I saw Emily on the security monitor, standing patiently on the porch with 2 coffee cups and a folder tucked under her arm. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "Nice press," I said flatly. "You must be pleased." "May I come in?" she asked, as though this weren't the house she'd grown up in. "We need to talk." I stepped aside, leading her to the sunroom, where morning light streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. My father had designed this room, his favorite place to read the paper and drink his coffee. Another inheritance I'd taken for granted. "You haven't returned my calls," Emily said, setting a coffee in front of me. "The board is asking questions. I'm sure you can handle it. You've been handling everything else behind my back for years." Emily sighed. "I tried to talk to you directly for 2 years, Mom. I came to you with reports, with proposals, with concerns from employees. You shut me down every time. So you went to your grandfather instead." "I didn't go to him. He came to me." Emily opened the folder, removing a photograph I'd never seen. My father and teenage Emily in his study. I was 16 when Grandpa first showed me the books. Not the public financials, but the real ones. The ones that showed what was happening beneath the surface. I stared at the photograph, at my father's serious expression as he pointed to something on his desk, at Emily's focused attention. 16? He was grooming you even then? "He was teaching me what you never had time to," Emily corrected. "The values the company was built on, the responsibility that comes with the Caldwell name." "While I was busy running the company he built," I snapped. "While you were busy transforming it into something he wouldn't recognize." Emily's voice remained steady. "When was the last time you visited the factory floor, Mom? When was the last time you knew the name of a single employee's child?" Grandpa knew them all. The accusation stung because it was true. My father had been beloved by his employees. I was respected, feared, but never loved. So this is my punishment? Public humiliation at the hands of my own daughter? Emily leaned forward. "This isn't revenge. It's karma for underestimating me." And maybe her voice softened. "The start of a new chapter, if you can swallow your pride and stand beside the daughter who outgrew you." I looked away, unable to meet her eyes. "You don't need me. You made that perfectly clear." "I don't need you," she agreed. "But I want you involved. Not as an adversary, but as a partner." She slid a new document across the table. "This is the real position I'm offering. Not some symbolic advisory role, but co-chairperson of international development. Your experience, your connections, your negotiation skills. Those are irreplaceable, but paired with a new vision, new ethics." I scanned the document, a real position with significant authority, though not the unchecked power I once held. "Why would you trust me after everything? What's to stop me from undermining you?" Emily smiled, not the calculated smile from the boardroom, but something gentler. "Because you're my mother. Because despite everything, I learned my determination from you. And because deep down, I think you know Grandpa was right. The morning light caught her profile, and for a moment I saw my father in her expression. The same quiet certainty, the same unwavering integrity. I built that company into what it is, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Yes, and now we can build it into what it should be. Emily extended her hand. Together, if you're willing. I looked at her hand, then up at her face, this remarkable young woman who had outmaneuvered me at every turn. My daughter, my legacy, whether I'd intended it or not. The humiliation was still raw, the betrayal still fresh. But beneath it all, something else stirred, a reluctant admirer. Emily had done what I never could, challenge the status quo, risk everything for her vision, stand up to the most formidable opponent she knew. She had become more than I had raised her to be. It won't be easy, I warned, taking her hand at last. I'm not exactly known for my collaborative nature. Emily's grip was firm, confident. I know, that's the first thing we'll work on. For the first time in days, I felt the ghost of a smile. So the student becomes the teacher? More like partners finding a better way forward. She squeezed my hand before releasing it. The board meeting is at 10. Will you be there? I considered the question, weighing my wounded pride against the opportunity before me. A chance to rebuild, to learn, to be part of something transforming rather than merely profitable. Yes, I said finally. I'll be there. As Emily left, I remained in the sunroom, watching the light shift across the garden my father had planted decades ago. The flowers he'd chosen still bloomed each year, outliving him, continuing his legacy in silent, persistent beauty. Perhaps Emily was right. Perhaps this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. Different than I'd imagined, humbling in ways I'd never anticipated, but a legacy continuing nonetheless. Not just my company anymore, but ours. Not just my vision, but something larger, something better. A new chapter for the Caldwell women. If I was brave enough to turn the page,